The RUTLES, All You Need Is Cash. A sort of combination of Monty Python and the Beatles. Can't get much better than that. What a wonderful, great film. Short and sweet. Directed by Eric Idle and Gary Weiss. Written by Eric Idle and Neil Innes. They wrote a lot of the songs, or most of the songs, or all of the songs. You've got cameos by Mick Jagger, George Harrison, Michael Palin, John Belushi, Dan Aykroyd, Bill Murray, Gilda Radner, Bianca Jagger, all of them. Great parody of the fall and rise of the Beatles. Well, let's change that around, the rise and fall of the Beatles. With a pretty skewering satire on a lot of it. Especially John Lennon, I think. They really get him when he teams up with not Yoko Ono, but well, let's go through it. The RUTLES, who are essentially an ersatz Beatles, and they consist of Ron Nasty, the John Lennon guy, played by Neil Innes, Dirk McQuickley, played by Eric Idle as Paul McCartney, Stig O'Hara, played by a British Indian guy called Ricky Fattar, and Barry Wom, or Barrington Womble, played by, I don't know, John Halsey. And they all play their instruments in the movie. I think, Eric Idle wrote a lot of Monty Python songs, The Meaning of Life. Recently, I think there was a vote on what they should change the national anthem to in Britain, and I think The Meaning of Life got the highest vote, or next after Land of Hope and Glory. So he knows how to put a song together. Mostly it's Neil Innes, though. A lot of great songs. Catchy. I used to have it when I was a kid, the RUTLES album. The songs, there's got the Piggy in the Middle, Do a Poo-Poo, I Am the Walrus, satire, parody, Green Onions. A lot of really catchy songs. Number one. They're really great to listen to on their own. I'd advise getting the album. Why not? It was made 78. It came out. I think what happened is the guy that ran, or still runs, Saturday Night Live, I think I read about this, talked to Eric Idle about doing this mockumentary, and it's one of the first mockumentaries, if not the first, before Spinal Tap and The Office and all the rest of it. So it's pretty groundbreaking in a lot of ways. And the guy from SNL, what's his name, Lorne Michaels, had the cash to put it together. And Eric Idle, in the height of his being funny decade, the 70s, like the rest of the Monty Python, that's when they were great. Kind of like Paul McCartney's solo. Well, I came up with a little saying about that, like, what do you get with competition? You get the Beatles. What do you get without any competition? You get wings. Not chicken wings, but the band wings. Because obviously the Beatles, John and Paul, as much as they loved each other, I'm sure they were very competitive with each other, and that spurred each other on to come up with great songs. Whereas Paul on his own, left to his devices, maybe it was a vegetarian diet or the massive intake of marijuana, although he had a couple of good numbers, ended up writing the Frogs chorus, so or Give My Regards to Broad Street, which is just has no melody whatsoever. What's going on, Paul? Some of his 70s stuff has still it's still catchy. Muller Kintyre is a great song. Live and Let Die is a great song. Someone's knocking at the door. I remember that when I was a kid. That was a great song. Anyway, so Ron Nasty is played by Neil Innes, and they do lots of parodies of the Beatles. The press conferences where John/Ron Nasty would be really sarcastic and sardonic, and it gives you a real sense of what it actually was like when the Beatles came out. Just the parody of it kind of give you the way they were so cheeky with the press, and you know, and able to outwit them as the press were trying to humiliate them, make them look stupid. The Beatles used their scouse wit their rapier wit to outflank the press corps. So yeah, obviously a very. Another thing I was thinking about is that teenage girls, teeny boppers, they got it right like 2 or 3 times. They got it right with Elvis, maybe Frank Sinatra, Elvis, the Beatles, and the Stones, and after that, down the toilet. They haven't had anything since. It's been a downhill just journey. I mean, I guess the Jackson 5 maybe. What have you got after them? You've got the Beatles, the Stones, what are the teeny boppers? The Osmonds, awful. The Bay City Rollers, an abomination, an embarrassment to an entire nation. After that, Duran Duran. I mean, not only were they awful, but they were pretentious, and they had horrible suits. Who else had you after that? Teeny boppers, Backstreet Boys. I mean, it's just beyond the pale. This is when, I don't know if actually the Osmonds and the Bay City Rollers, you had fantasies of actually assassinating any of them, but once you get into the Backstreet Boys, maybe as you get older, you start to think about. In fact, I heard a funny line in a movie I watched today. Another movie. It's just you're kind of running. It was quite funny. It had Ryan Reynolds and Samuel L. Jackson in it, and he's a bodyguard, Ryan Reynolds, and he had the usual action things happen to him at the end. He says, "I think I'm going to go into celebrity security, like looking after boy bands, because even if you lose one of the members, nobody's really going to care." So, yeah, that's what it is. Boy bands. I mean, Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, who Kitchen Sink. They have the British ones. Take That, no thanks. East 17, who unfortunately came west. Who else did you have after that? S Club 7. That was the mathematics. That's what they were all able to add up to. S Club Juniors, which I think was a NAMBLA produced boy band. It was just a kids band. And then you had the who is it after that? Oh yeah, here we go. This is it. This is where we're at right now. We went from Frank Sinatra to Beatles, Justin Bieber. I mean, that's it. We have nothing's really happened since him. This is it. This is the state of our civilization. Justin Bieber. And Justin Bieber's the bad boy now. He grew up from having that Beatlesque hairstyle when he was 15 and the punchable face that they all do in boy bands. And this isn't just jealousy. This is I'm happy for the guy. I think all boy bands, all that sort of stuff, they should just turn the music down, because the music is totally and utterly inconsequential. All that matters is how good looking the person is, male or female, and how they dance around, and how good the music video looks. So the music is inconsequential. Why don't they put on something good, like a Motown song or something, Stevie Wonder singing something, and then just sing on top of that and dance around and all that. No, don't sing on top of that, just mime. Yeah. And then the teeny boppers, they get their substitute boyfriend, all, was it 30 million of them that think that if he only met me, he would like me the best. I would be the one for him. He just doesn't, no one understands him, just me. Oh, yeah. It's not jealousy. I know what you're thinking, it isn't. Like I said, I'm happy for him. Just don't. Why am I forced to listen to this music every time I go out or turn on the TV or whatever? It's not fair to the rest of us who aren't glandular, pubescent types. Anyway, back to All You Need Is Cash. They start off in Liverpool, and yeah, I'll tell you lots of the funny bits. So their manager's called Leggy Mountbatten, who lost a leg in the RAF from he nodded off to get to I don't know, and they interview Leggy Mountbatten, who's like hobbling along with a cane. They interview his mother, and he says the interviewer says, what did Leggy see in the Beatles? Did he like the music? No, he hated the music. What was it? It was their trousers. Oh, really? What about their trousers? They're very tight. So there's a bit of a parody of Brian Epstein there. And not that I'm saying in any way that what attracted Brian Epstein to the leather-clad Beatles at the age of 19 in the sweaty cavern had anything remotely to do with that. They were his boys purely for the fact of their musical exuberance. That was it. That was the only attraction. And that was the only attraction for the Bay City Rollers manager, who unfortunately got arrested for interfering with a minor back in the 70s. Or that was the 80s, I think. Tam something, I forget his name. There's no absolutely zero. Only thing that motivates them is the love of music and entertainment. Anyway, so that's Leggy Mountbatten. And then they make it big. And they go over to the... Ron Nasty declares that the RUTLES are bigger than God. And everybody loses their shit. But he actually said they're bigger than Rod. Not the best joke. I just couldn't remember any other ones. What happened there? So then they go off like the Beatles. They get under the spell of a swami, of a mystic, who's the Surrey mystic called Reg or something. And they go off to it. And then, unfortunately, they come back from their weekend, their spiritual weekend in Bognor Regis. And they come back, and unfortunately, Leggy Mountbatten has accepted a teaching post in Australia. So they're devastated by that. There's... what was I going to say? Yeah. Here we're going. I was going to say the great songs. Yeah. So you've got... I remember reading that George Harrison said this was produced, I think, by Handmade Films. In fact, it says here on Wikipedia, one of the first films of its kind and an inspiration for This Is Spinal Tap. So, I mean, we know how influential, maybe you don't know how influential This Is Spinal Tap was, and it is. The Office, all these mockumentaries coming out. Ricky Gervais was very influenced by This Is Spinal Tap, and that was originally influenced from All You Need Is Cash. So I think it's an under-recognised film. I remember reading that George Harrison, who I helped to produce it, and I think this was a Handmade Films. Who was it produced by? No, I was saying that there was Lorne Michaels, but definitely George Harrison actually appears in it, and I know he was friends with Eric Idle, and I think this is one of the films. Well, I know that Life of Brian, Monty Python and Holy Grail was funded mostly by Pink Floyd and Led Zeppelin. I mean, how cool is that, yeah? Because they were such fans of Monty Python, they shelled out the money that they got from Dark Side of the Moon and Led Zeppelin 4 to help Monty Python produce one of the best comedies of all time, The Holy Grail. And then Life of Brian, I think, had problems getting produced because it was quite a taboo topic, Christianity and Christ. And I think George Harrison helped, well, definitely did that. I think that was Handmade Films, which has a great roster of films, handmade films that George Harrison and I think one other guy started. Withnell and I, what a great film. That's the only one I can think of. What else? Oh, God. I know there's another one. Well, A Fish Called Wanda, I'm pretty sure that's Handmade Films. Oh, God. But Withnell and I, maybe I should do a podcast on that. I love that film. So, they go over to America, and Ron Nasty, towards the end, they get hooked up in the Barrington Womble, or Barry Wom, who's the Ringo guy, really wants to be a hairdresser. Ron Nasty falls in love with a woman called Chastity, who is the daughter of the man who started World War II. And she's wearing a Gestapo uniform with a Nazi armband and has a black cowlick. Like, there's a man called Adolf Hitler. I'm not sure if you've heard of him, but she is the daughter of Adolf Hitler, and they become involved. And that's sort of a parody of John Lennon and Yoko Ono. They're basically saying that Yoko Ono was as popular as Hitler. And they also parody when John Lennon and Yoko Ono lay in bed for a week for peace. In this, they're just sitting in the shower getting showered on for peace. Really funny parody of the... And supposedly I read that John Lennon, they were worried if he wasn't going to like him. He thought it was hilarious. I mean, well, why wouldn't he? I mean, it's just great satire. And of course, all the Beatles had a great sense of humour. Oh yeah, there's another... I think there's a lot of cameos in it. There's Paul Simon, Mick Jagger, like I said, George Harrison. There's all those SNL guys. The guy I thought was the funniest was Ron Wood, the guitar player for the Rolling Stones. He plays a British biker. And it's funny, the British bikers are a bit different from the American ones. In America, they're all like 6'5", 400 pounds. In Britain, they're like little scrawny guys with bad teeth, and but like, you know, and Nazi helmets and all that. This is back in the 60s and 70s. The British bikers are pretty funny. There's another film about when Bo Diddley and Chuck Berry and Jerry Lee Lewis had a big rock and roll show. I think it's 1972, maybe in Hyde Park or something like that. And they've got all the bikers there, and also the Rolling Stones in Hyde Park in '68 after Brian Jones died. 2 days later, they had this huge free concert in Hyde Park. The Rolling Stones did. That's when Mick Jagger released all the butterflies, and they all died. Well, you can see the British bikers in that film, and they're hilarious. And they wear, they're all pimply, and you know, there's like scrawny British guys dressed up as bikers, but they look kind of cool actually. And they do this dance that they do at Status Quo concerts as well, where they hitch their thumbs in their belt loops, and sort of the guys will just face each other and sort of not wiggle their shoulders, but sort of like go one shoulder this and then the next shoulder and then facing each other. It's a really cool dance actually. It's also in the film Tommy. You see the British bikers doing that dance, and you see them at Status Quo concerts. A little bit of anthropology there, if you ever check that out, of a little subgroup. British bikers are quite funny, because they're called Nigel, and they live with their mum, and they drink tea, and yet they own but they own great Triumph motorbikes. Those are great bikes. Yeah. So this is my new style of podcast, which is just say whatever the hell comes in my mind. There's no way I'm gonna do lots and lots of research unless I'm getting paid. I tried that with the Shining podcast, which has lots of information. This also has information, but just stuff I've picked up along the way, and it comes into my mind. Probably more interesting to listen to than... Oh yeah, what happens? I think one of them, one of the RUTLES has a problem because their wife runs away with 4 Scotsmen from Hull, which is a running gag in Monty Python. 4 Scotsmen from Hull. I don't really know why they're from Hull if they're Scottish, or why they're in Hull. Perhaps because they've got the full regalia on. They've got the kilts, the sporrans, the frilly shirts, the ballet shoes, the hiking socks, and the little ribbon. But they're in Hull for some reasons. Why would they be there? They're not construction workers. They're not in a building site. They're dressed up like they're going to a wedding. Maybe they would be 4 of them. Maybe they're Mormon Scotsmen getting married to someone, to 4 women, to 1 woman. No, it's can Mormons 4 husbands marry one woman? Or can only one husband marry 4 women? It's usually unfair like that, isn't it? There's always 4 women for one guy. You know, that's what my love life's like, usually. If I'm honest, you know, I can't help it. Yeah, they also do a parody of Yoko Ono's film, which I think was called Bottoms, which was about an hour long and just filming a lot of bottoms, as in derrieres, people's buttocks. But this one, they use Bernard Bresslaw, who's the big guy in Carry On movies. Bernard Bresslaw, the sort of cockney, big dumb cockney guy. In the 50s, he had a song called "You Need Feet to Keep Your Legs from Fraying at the End." And they used that great song in... Look it up on YouTube. Bernard Bresslaw, the guy from the Carry On films, the big guy, who had a song that was a minor hit in the 50s called "You Need Feet." It's a cracker. How long has this been going for? 20 minutes. How the hell am I going to spill this out? So, Neil Innes was originally in the Bonzo Dog Doodah band with the guy who was Vivian Stanshall, and they were a really wacky band in the 60s. They started out as trad jazz band because all the middle class students, there was a trad jazz revival because rock and roll was considered for the plebs, you know. They were still had the snobbishness back then, and all the sort of middle class students would wear sweaters and listen to trad jazz. And the Bonzo Dog Doodah band were all middle class boys. I think they may have went to Oxford or whatever. And they started out playing trad jazz, but then they got more and more crazy and wacky and Monty Python-esque songs before Monty Python happened. So check them out, Bonzo Dog Doodah band. Neil Innes was in them. So he knows how to put a song together. There's another great song he did called Keensum. It's not named after Milton Keynes. Keensum. It's a really catchy song. It's just one of their songs from one of their albums, and I really love that song. And it has a flute in it, and it's really great lyrics. It's really a hidden gem, that song. So, and Paul McCartney had actually produced the Bonzo Dogs Doodahs band "I'm the Urban Spaceman," which is sung and written by Neil Innes. So these people had all known each other for a long time. They were all part of that milieu. I heard that Ricky Fattar, he was a musician. I read about this stuff before. Oh, sorry. So it's has a lot of charm, this film. What have I done, 23 minutes? Maybe that's enough. Barry Cryer's in it. I've seen him in just a small little gig in London. He's someone who's on Radio 4 in Britain a lot on the comedy shows. He's a funny guy. There's lots of good gags. Henry Wolf was in Rutland Weekend Television. That actually where the Rutles come from. Eric Idle had a show called Rutland Weekend Television, which was an incredibly small budgeted comedy show. And when I was a kid, I had the Rutland Weekend Television book, and it was great. They had television shows like The Pink Panzer, and it had a Nazi guy, stormtrooper, with a pink suit on and a big pink Panzer, looking rather camp. And that was the Pink Panzer. And they had lots of other stuff. I wish I could get that book. Maybe I could look for it online. So they had Rutland Weekend Television. It was funny. And the Rutles came out of that. That's where they got the name, the Rutles, from. So it says here, the show has been released on DVD, originally in a 66-minute version incorporating cuts for syndication. Later in a special edition restored to its full length of 76 minutes and with extras including a commentary by Idol. The full-length version replaces a spoofed newsreel voiceover by Idol with an American-sounding announcer. In 2013, the show was given a Blu-ray release in the form of a double pack with the RUTLES 2 Can't Buy Me Lunch, once again in its original 76-minute version. The soundtrack was reissued on who cares about that? The RUTLES soundtrack. Let's try and see the songs here. Soundtrack album. I had this, or my friend had it, and I borrowed it off him, never getting it. Hold my hand, yeah. Number one. With a girl like you, I must be in love. Ouch, you're breaking my heart. I'm living in hope. Love life. That's a great parody of All You Need Is Love. Good Times Roll, Double Back Alley, Cheese and Onions. I have often done cheese and onions. Man and Machine. Piggy in the Middle, Let's Be Natural. That's a sort of Dear Prudence parody. They're all good songs. Goose Step Mama. That's the one they used to sing in the cavern. They must have picked up when they were over in the Rat Keller, the RUTLES. I think they said they were in Hamburg. They were in Germany. Oh, what's this?